Jets rookie corner Sauce Gardner joins me today to talk about his new sauce and expectations for his rookie season. Plus, the Jets have begun making their cuts, and there are some surprises. We will talk about it today on the Locked On Jets podcast.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Tuesday, August 30th, 2022, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you for making the show your first listen or your first watch every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. That includes YouTube. If you like what you see or what you hear, hit the subscribe button. You'll never miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please give this episode a big thumbs up. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Well, the Jets have begun making their cuts. They need to get down to 53 players by 4 o'clock Eastern today. They began the process yesterday making a number of cuts, and we will get to that in a bit. But first, I'm going to be joined by Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner, his nickname Sauce, he has a new sauce at Buffalo Wild Wings. He joined me. We recorded an interview a few days ago talking about the new sauce, and I also asked him some questions about the transition from college to the NFL and expectations for his rookie season. Let's jump into my interview with Sauce Gardner, the next shutdown corner of the New York Jets.
Sauce, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me today. Could you speak a little bit about what you're up to with Buffalo Wild Wings?
Man, I teamed up with Buffalo Wild Wings because, they're going to have the football season on lock this year. They always had the football seasons on lock, since I was in high school, since I can remember. I always went to Buffalo Wild Wings to just watch sports. They have great entertainment, TVs all over the walls, 26 different signature sauces and seasonings, so we were able to come up with my own sauce. And I feel like that's what made it so much easier because they already have so many other ones, so my sauce is going to be called Sauce Sauce. It's a smoky, sweet, and barbecue, so I'm a barbecue guy, but I also like spice. So that's why we were able to come up with the perfect one. It released on August 31st, which is my birthday, so I'm looking forward to that.
Could you speak about what the biggest adjustment is going from college to the NFL as a rookie?
I would probably say just knowing all the guys in the NFL are good. They get paid for a reason, so you can't underestimate anyone. The coaches, GM, the owner, they all brought a certain player onto the team for a reason, So in college, it could just be like one guy, one receiver that's the best receiver that's real good, and the other ones are, not as good. But in the NFL, everybody good. So that's the main thing.
How challenging is it to learn the playbook in the NFL versus the scheme you ran in college?
It was easy. As soon as I got drafted, I was asking for the playbook. So I know the playbook like the back of my hand now. So it's pretty easy.
Is there like different terminology or the coverages more complex, or is it essentially the same thing or similar concept to what you did at Cincinnati?
It's not really similar to Cincinnati at all, but, it's kind of simple. For the corners, for sure, it's simple. For the rest of the guys, like the backers, it's kind of complex for them probably. The way it looks on the playbook, it looks like it's much harder for them than it is for the cornerbacks, So, yeah.
Is it just like when you're playing corner, you just cover the guy and that's pretty much it?
I mean, if it's man, then it's definitely easier. But, even our zones is not too complex. The zone that we play, is not too hard.
Can you speak about some of the nuances of the different coverages? What are some things fans may not realize? The difference between maybe press versus off coverage or man versus zone?
Uh, it's like when you play in zone, you can't just be able to stay focused on what you do. When it comes to zone, you have this zone, so you have to be able to know what everyone around you does. You got to know where their zone is and what they have to do, what their job description is. And man, it's self-explanatory. You have your man, and off coverage, I would probably say off. It's probably a little bit harder than press, because off coverage, you got somebody running at you full speed, and you don't know if he's gonna keep running, if he's gonna break down. You don't know what he's gonna do. So, but when you play press coverage, you got to be able to have a lot of confidence, because it starts at the line of scrimmage, and you got to try not to get beat, at the line of scrimmage.
Is there any player or players you model your game after?
Not really. I watch Jalen Ramsey. I watch a lot of guys like Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, J.C. Jackson, Tre'Davious White. I try to take little things from a lot of people's game, but it's not just somebody I'm just trying to be just like. That's just how it is as a cornerback. You're going to see little things that another cornerback do, and if you think you can implement it into your game and it'll help you, that's what you're going to do.
What's the toughest match? What player was the toughest matchup you've ever had, either in college or so far in preseason in the NFL?
I don't know. I feel like the guys on our team with the Jets, like Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, who else? Those guys, those are the best guys I face, for sure. I feel like I make them better, they make me better. So that's why when we go against other teams, we're able to just dominate because we already seen what good is like.
Do you prefer to play one side of the field versus the other?
It really don't matter. Like in college and when I first got to the NFL before I even lined up, I always said I like playing on the right more, because I'm right-handed. I was a lot more comfortable being on the right. But then my coach told me, like, the left side, the left corner, that's where the ball goes most of the time because the majority of the quarterbacks in the NFL are right-handed. And so then that just made me like, all right, that's where I want to be. So I just had to keep working on doing certain things with my left, on the left side of the field. I feel like I'm really comfortable with it now.
What are your goals for this season as a rookie?
I want to be an all-pro, Pro Bowler. I want to win the Super Bowl. I want to be the best teammate I could be.
And my last question is just, do you have any message for your new fan base, the Jets fans?
Main thing is August 31st, they need to get their hands on that sauce that's coming out. That's the main thing. That sauce. I want to be able to hear their feedback on it. I know I love it. I know they're gonna love it as well. They all been asking me, in training camp, if I had sauce coming out, and I told them it's coming August 31st. I just never told them, who it was by. So I'm just looking forward to that. That's the main thing.
Let me give you some advice. If you're going to play daily fantasy this year, do not take many receivers who are going to be covered by Sauce Gardner that day, but do use PrizePicks. PrizePicks is simple. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to $10 your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you want to watch. That includes the NBA, it includes Major League Baseball, it includes the NHL, the PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, the WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and yes, the NFL, all of those things. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and it's safe with fast withdrawals. It's currently operational in over 30 states and Canada as well. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, you guessed it, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thank you again for making Locked On Jets your first listen or first watch every day. This show is free and available on all platforms. Now I have a confession to make. I lied to you a little bit yesterday. If you watched or listened to yesterday's show, at the end I'd said we were going to have our mailbag on Tuesday this week. I thought it at the time, but the Jets got ahead of me a little bit. They started making some cuts. Jets need to trim their roster down to 53 players by 4 o'clock Eastern today. Usually in the past, the Jets have done all their cuts on the deadline day, and I expect that the Jets will go all the way to the deadline. There's going to be talk about trading Denzel Mims. I'm sure that they'll be in the mix for that. And typically what happens is the first couple of guys are pretty easy to cut because they're not going to be on the team and they probably don't have much trade value. But once we get down to like players 54, 55, 56, you're calling other teams, you're seeing maybe we can get something for him instead of just cutting him and getting nothing in return. So a lot of times you'll see teams go to the deadline and we won't find out the actual cuts, the final cuts, until 5, 6 o'clock, sometimes 7 o'clock in the evening, even though the deadline is at 4 o'clock. So just stay patient. The one thing I'll give the NFL credit for is doing this, when you're covering this, it was the worst thing in the world when they did it the Saturday of Labor Day weekend, because you have a long weekend and you're trying to enjoy your Saturday, and yet you're waiting forever for the results to come out. So I appreciate that the NFL has moved this to a Tuesday the last couple of years, and that's with the new preseason, which only has 3 weeks. Now it's the Tuesday after the final game instead of the Saturday after the fourth game. But the Jets did make some cuts yesterday, and some of them surprised me. There's nothing I'm outraged over. It's going to take a lot for me to get outraged over, somebody not being one of the 53 best Jets players unless they do something really ridiculous. But there were some cuts that did surprise me. So we'll go through the cuts, and maybe we'll go from most surprising to least surprising. To me, the most surprising one, because I talked about this guy last week, is Javelin Guidry. And it's not so much that I'm a huge Javelin Guidry fan. He could very well end up on the practice squad. I mean, I would not be shocked to see him claimed. He does have some playing experience, which some teams seem to really like. It's not that Guidry is a great player. It's not that I'm expecting big things from Guidry. It's just he had 2 roles that were not the easiest to fill. One of them is backup slot corner, and the other is gunner on the punt team. Now, I'm not saying that these are impossible to fill. I'm just saying that, you have a guy who fills 2 roles that nobody else really has on the roster right now. I would have expected the Jets to keep him just for that reason. He's played inside, he's played outside. Now, he hasn't done either of these particularly effectively, and that's why I'm not outraged. And even, a gunner on the punt team, I'm surprised the Jets are going to go to the effort to try and find one. It's not a huge deal. It's not the type of thing that makes you go crazy. It's certainly not the type of move that's going to outrage me in the least. But I was a bit surprised to see Guidry go just because he filled these 2 roles, and it's not really obvious who takes over for them. And this might be, honestly, me misreading the coaching staff. This isn't so much that, again, it's not that I think Guidry's good. It's that I thought the coaching staff thought Guidry was good. So maybe I misread the coaching staff a little bit. But Javelin Guidry, a guy the Jets signed as an undrafted free agent out of Utah a couple of years ago, is gone. There were some suggestions by some NFL insiders that Guidry could have some interest on the waiver wire. And the way it works, if you're not familiar with the waiver wire, is players with less than 4 years of experience, when they're cut on cutdown day, they go through this process known as waivers. And the other 31 teams all have a chance to say, I want this guy. And if one of the other 31 teams says, I want this guy, they get him. It's that simple. And they get his old contract. They'll get Guidry's Jets contract. And that's how it works. And if more than one team says, I want this guy, the player goes to the team with the higher draft pick in the NFL draft over the spring. That's how it works. Now, players with more than 4 years of experience, they just become free agents. You don't get the chance to say, I want him. If you want him, you have to go sign him. You have to go give him a new contract. But it sounds like Guidry could have some waiver wire interest. We'll see. I would not be shocked to see him claimed. I would not be shocked to see him end up on the Jets practice squad. Now, the next player who surprised me was Del'Shawn Phillips. Here's why Del'Shawn surprised me. Now, I was actually a big Del'Shawn fan because I thought he was great on special teams last year. He cannot play linebacker at all. I love Del'Shawn. He can't play linebacker. But the reason it surprised me was because of how good he was on special teams. And while it's true he really can't play linebacker, it's not like the Jets are going to keep a guy who's great at linebacker instead of him. So, if you kept Delshon, maybe you would be downgrading at linebacker a little bit, but it's not like you're going from Ray Lewis to Delshon Phillips. You're maybe downgrading a little bit, and in exchange, you're getting much better special teams play. And that's what's interesting about this is it feels like the Jets are cutting some core special teamers, and Delshon Phillips for me is more significant than Javelin Guidry because I thought Delshon Phillips was really good last year. Now, there is some hope for people like me who like Delshon because you have to remember, last year Delshon did begin the season on the practice squad, and finally the Jets saw the light. And after a couple of stellar performances on special teams early in the season, they gave him a spot on the 53-man roster. So maybe some hope for Delshon. Again, I'm not outraged. I would have liked to have seen Delshon stay. I like Delshon as a special teamer. I'd like to see the Jets focus on special teams because I think sometimes that part of the game gets overlooked, but this does not outrage me. I'll tell you one that did outrage some people is Bradley Anae. It did not outrage me, though. Anae is a kind of I don't know if preseason stereotype is the right word, but I see lots of guys like this where they've been disappointing draft picks for the team that selected them. In Anae's case, it's Dallas. They get a couple of years of experience. They go to a new team. They play the second half of preseason games. Now, I know Anae did make a play early in the Atlanta game when he was playing with the starters, but they go to a new team and they play a lot of like the third, fourth quarter of preseason games. And because they're experienced and going up against guys who, maybe borderline practice squatters, they look great. They look amazing. And then they get cut and people don't understand it. Well, it's not just about how you perform in preseason games. There's more that goes into it. Part of it is the coaching staff is watching you every day. And I think sometimes maybe we underestimate the role training camp practices has in the decision-making teams have. Because we don't see that every day. Unless you're going to camp every day, your only access to these players, the only time you see them is during the game. So you think the games are all that matter. But there's more that goes into it than that. And you also have to project these guys. And if there's an eye dominating the competition he played really worthy of a roster spot? Well, it could be, but the problem is there's a bit of a logjam at the defensive end spot. There are lots of guys, there are guys, probably a couple of guys who deserve to make this team who aren't going to make it just because the Jets have so many numbers at defensive end. So I'm not surprised Anae was cut. I would have cut Anae myself. And it's not that he played poorly. I understand your perspective if you want to say, hey, Anae looked really good out there. What are we doing? It's just a numbers game, and it's projection. Anae was a guy with a couple of years of experience. You'd expect him to go out and play really well against third stringers, practice squatters. That's what happened, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate into a game. I know some people were surprised by this. I know some people were upset. However, this does not compare to how surprised and upset some people. I tried to warn you yesterday, but there was a quarterback the Jets cut. The preseason Tom Brady is no longer a member of the Jets, at least until he clears waivers and maybe signs with the practice squad. Ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we're going to talk about the Jets waiving Chris Streveler. Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive while stoned? What's the worst that could happen, you think? You'll end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've used marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Tuesday, talking about some early Jets cuts. The Jets get ahead of themselves on cut down day. They have to be down to 53 players by 4 o'clock Eastern today, but they've already begun making the cuts. Chris Streveler, the preseason Tom Brady, the guy who led the Jets to 3 comeback wins in preseason, the icon, no longer a member of the Jets, at least in the short term. Pretty good chance he's going to clear waivers. I'm not going to guarantee it, but I think people saying that because Streveler played 3 great preseason games, he's a lock to be claimed by somebody else. If there was a guy on, I don't know, San Francisco who was like the fourth string quarterback and led 3 preseason comebacks, would there be a clamor in the Jets fan base to claim him? Probably not. And I don't think, I think it's possible somebody may have seen Streveler and said, you know what, there's some tools to work with, especially the running ability. Maybe we can build some packages. I think there's a case for Streveler to be claimed, but I don't think it's a guarantee. He could end up on the Jets practice squad. Now, the only complicating factor is the Jets are probably going to carry 3 quarterbacks, which means do you really need a fourth? Typically, if you carry 2 quarterbacks on your roster, you stick one on the practice squad, and that's your third quarterback. I don't know if you're going to carry 4 on your roster and practice squad combined, but in any event, listen, you know how I feel about Streveler. I said it. I think he showed more than Mike White. I think he's got more skills than Mike White. I would have kept him over Mike White. The Jets coaching staff doesn't seem to feel the same way. And as I said earlier, they do see him every day in practice, to be fair. To be fair, they do see him every day in practice. So I can't go crazy about it. I also can't go crazy because it's the third quarterback. And I know people are upset. Listen, what are the odds of Streveler actually being the next Tom Brady? I know I say jokingly the preseason Tom Brady, but what are the odds of him being the next Tom Brady or Kurt Warner or Tony Romo? Or you name your low-round pick undrafted free agent who came into the league and played well. Probably pretty low. And it doesn't, Streveler did it against guys who are going to be practice squatters themselves. And he looked pretty raw as a passer at points. And here's the other thing to remember. He's in his late 20s already. So it's not like this is a guy who's a blue chip prospect. Would I have kept him over Mike White? Yes. But let's be honest. If the Jets had to play either Mike White or Streveler this year, and I understand people are going to say Mike White played great against Cincinnati. You're right if you say Mike White played against Cincinnati last year. Is Mike White going to repeat that performance? Probably not. If you have to start Streveler, are you going to win a game? Probably not. Do I think Streveler maybe gave you a little bit more to work with than Mike White, despite Mike White's past? Yeah, I do, but you want me to get angry because the Jets chose one guy over their other as their number 3 quarterback? I'm going to need more than that. Listen, 5 years from now, if Streveler's playing at an all-pro level, if he is the next Brady, the next Warner, the next Romo, then you will have every right to be angry, and you'll have every right to say, John, you were wrong. So that's where things are, but I mean, can I go crazy about this? No. And then some cuts that were really not surprising. LaMichael Pirine, the writing's been on the wall for him for a while. I think we knew LaMichael Pirine was not long for the New York Jets. A pick that I never understood because there was nothing about outside of his hands, he could adjust to an errant throw, but outside of his hands, there was nothing exciting about his game when the Jets drafted him in 2020. I feel like that's one of those people just want to blame. When people want to absolve Joe Douglas, they just blame something on Adam Gase. That's an easy one to blame on Adam Gase. I don't know that it's Adam Gase's fault, though. Joe Douglas is making the pick, and this was not a good pick by Joe Douglas. And then the Jets also cut some wide receivers, Irv Charles and Calvin Jackson, one of whom caught the game-winning pass from Streveler on Sunday. Irv Charles apparently was having a pretty good camp. Calvin Jackson actually was looking decent, too. And the noteworthy part of this is these were guys who maybe seemed like they'd be in the mix if Denzel Mims was gone. So if the Jets are cutting both of these guys, who knows? Maybe it's a sign Denzel Mims stays. And I love that that's my last thought because now if Denzel Mims gets traded today, that'll be the last thing you remember me saying on this Tuesday. Anyway, that's all for our episode today. Thanks to Sauce Gardner for stopping by, and thank you for listening or watching. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button. You'll get notifications as new episodes are posted, so you'll never miss an episode. If you're listening on a podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. It helps us out tremendously, helps other Jets fans find the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please give the episode a big thumbs up. Helps the channel out again and helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Cutdown Day.